Tonight, making it official.
Let's finish this job. I know we can.
President Biden formally kicks off his re-election for another White House term.
Plus, fallout after a major shakeup in cable news.
Fox News Media and Tucker Carlson have mutually agreed to part ways.
What happens now that the host of the most-watched cable TV news program is out at Fox?
And a tenuous ceasefire allowing more evacuations in Sudan as foreigners race to leave behind growing violence.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. He's running. President Biden officially throws his hat in the 2024 race. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And good evening in Washington. I'm Jenna Browder. Joe Biden, the oldest sitting president in office, finally announcing he will run, asking for 4 more years to complete his agenda.
Let's finish this job. I know we can. Because this is the United States of America. There's nothing, simply nothing we cannot do if we do it together.
That from his campaign video released earlier this morning as CBN White House correspondent Abigail Robertson reports, despite low approval ratings, he still has strong Democratic support.
The president announcing his re-election bid 4 years to the day after he began his last run. In a video released this morning, he repeated his theme that there's a battle for the soul of America, and he's asking voters to help him finish the job he started.
That's why I'm running for re-election. Because I know America. I know we're good and decent people.
While it's still early in election season, the odds are good that 2024 will be a rematch of President Biden versus former President Donald Trump. Despite recent troubling poll numbers for the sitting president, 88% of Democrats stand ready to support their current leader.
This president has shown extraordinary leadership.
A new NBC poll reveals 70% of all Americans, including 51% of Democrats, don't want Biden to run again, with nearly half of respondents citing the 80-year-old president's age as the reason.
It's legitimate for people to raise issues about my age. It's totally legitimate to do that. And the only thing I can say is watch me.
While Robert Kennedy Jr. has announced he's running for the Democratic ticket, Nathan Gonzalez from Inside Elections tells CBN News he thinks it's unlikely Biden will face a major challenger in the primary.
There are some Democrats who maybe have concerns, but when they look around at who could be the alternative, there isn't an heir apparent. And so that brings Democrats back to Biden.
Adding Republicans see an opportunity in a Biden re-election bid, with voters concerned about issues like inflation in the economy, as well as the ongoing crisis on our southern border.
They see his polling numbers, that he's an unpopular president. He's the incumbent, which means he'll be held more responsible for the problems that are facing the country. But they also have to show that they can beat him. They've faced Biden once before, and they've come up short.
The NBC poll also revealed Biden's approval rating has dropped to 41% among all adults and 30% among independents.
Democrats are actually optimistic. I mean, they realize that his polling numbers aren't great, but he is the president of the United States. He won in 2020. Democrats overperformed in 2022 when he was in office, and they feel like he is their best candidate moving forward.
Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, President Biden spent most of 2020 campaigning on Zoom calls from his home in Delaware. This campaign will look very different from his last, as many Americans question whether or not Biden, the oldest American president, can physically and mentally handle another run. Reporting for CBN News, Abigail Robertson.
All right, thank you, Abby. And here now to discuss CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brodie. So, David, let's start right there. Does President Biden have what it takes to grind out another campaign? And do you think we'll see him out on the campaign trail more this time around?
Well, the smart money says no, that he doesn't. I mean, don't take my word for it. I mean, I think you line up 10 analysts, they'll all say the same thing. You know, this reminds me a little bit. Can I do a football analogy? Sorry if I lost you at football, folks, but you know, like in the football game, you know, like when you're a really good team, you got a good ground game, a good running game, you got a good defense, and the quarterback, not all that great. Kind of like this. It's like even the Democrats admit, right? There's 50, 60% or so of Democrats that are really not enthused about Biden. Biden's like the quarterback. You're like, just don't mess it up. We've got a good ground game. We got a good defense. We just don't need you to mess it up. And what do I mean by ground game? Well, mail-in balloting, ballot harvesting, legal ballot harvesting, all these type of things. Democrats are excellent in the ground game, getting out the vote. And in essence, that's what's going to basically put Joe Biden over the top. It's not going to be Joe Biden and his charisma. It's not going to be Joe Biden and his intellectual competency at this point at the age of 80. So that's clearly the challenges that lie ahead for Biden.
Definitely strategic scheduling today. Just right down the road earlier today, David, the president was speaking in a trade union, and of course it was friendly audience for him. They chanted 4 more years. On to another topic, though, a big week in media shakeups. Tucker Carlson, of course, as we all know, is now out at Fox. David, your thoughts about the ouster, audience reaction, and what you're hearing about what happened?
Well, a couple things. First of all, I think this is a trickle scenario. We'll get more information in the next 24 to 48 hours, especially once Tucker Carlson actually starts to talk about what actually happened. But you can put the pieces together pretty obviously off the top, right? The Dominion lawsuit being settled by Fox News, the fact that Tucker Carlson was out giving an alternate version of what happened on January 6th. You've got the harassment lawsuit by a former Fox News employee saying that he and his coworkers at Tucker Carlson's show contributed to a hostile work environment. Oh, and by the way, I'm sorry, did I forget this part? The fact that he dissed many of the Fox execs, including the Murdochs, in some of that Dominion lawsuit email exchanges that we saw over the last few weeks, last month or so. So you put all of that together, and it seemed like the writing was on the wall for a while. Having said that, I think we'll get a lot more when Tucker Carlson makes a few statements or two as we move forward.
Yeah, David, at the same time, Don Lemon out at CNN. This is after several reports of misogyny, including a recent comment he made about Nikki Haley being past her prime. David, what do you make of this news from CNN? And in some ways, is this a win for Nikki Haley?
Yeah, I guess you could look at it that way. I for sure. Don't get me wrong, but I think that's the short version. I think that's the micro version. I think what macro-wise, what's happening here, we're seeing a shift in the media landscape, right? You have CNN that has lost viewers ad nauseum over the last year or two. Why? They've gone far left. And so, therefore, they're trying to recalibrate. Don Lemon has been very toxic for them. On the right, you see Tucker Carlson has been maybe, even though he's been great for viewers, he's not been great for business for Fox, at least the way they see it, because they're getting slapped with lawsuits left and right. So they're trying to kind of come to the center. CNN's trying to come to the center. And I think both are trying to recalibrate their branding. And I think that's a bit what's going on here.
David, we're going to have to leave it there. CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brodie. David, thanks always for your insights.
Thanks, David.
Well, thank you. Always. I got that. Thank you.
And now to Sudan, where a shaky 3-day ceasefire is in place. U.S. Special Forces rescued Americans at the embassy. Other countries are evacuating citizens as well. And there's concern that outside influences could reignite fighting. National Security Correspondent Caitlin Burke has the latest.
The Pentagon is evaluating multiple options to facilitate evacuations of Americans. 16,000, many of them dual citizens, remain in the country, and getting them out may require troops on the ground.
U.S. Africa Command and the Department of Defense continue to work closely with State Department, which has the lead for helping American citizens wishing to depart Sudan.
As 2 U.S. Navy ships remain on standby off the coast, the Pentagon is also providing support for those traveling by land to reach the evacuation points.
We have placed ISR assets, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance assets over the land evacuation route to help facilitate safe travel by land from Khartoum to the port of Sudan. And we have started to see a more regular pattern of convoys begin to arrive.
The White House stresses there are not currently American boots on the ground in Sudan, although before the ceasefire declaration, U.S. Special Forces, including SEAL Team 6, landed briefly in the country to save Americans at the U.S. Embassy. That operation, a success.
U.S. forces carried out this mission with precision and professionalism.
Meanwhile, other countries are also conducting large-scale evacuations and cooperating with each other to get citizens out.
These situations are very difficult for foreign governments to handle. because the situation on the ground is a conflict situation. It's chaotic. There's a lot of risk and danger.
Outside groups are reportedly destabilizing the region further by providing support to the two generals battling each other for control of Sudan, something the U.S. says must stop.
We do have deep concern about the engagement of the Prigozhin group, the Wagner group, in Sudan. It's in so many different countries in Africa, an element that, when it's engaged, simply brings more death and destruction with it.
More than 400 people have been killed since the fighting broke out and nearly 4,000 injured. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
Thank you, Caitlin. Even as she reported, more naval vessels are on standby near Port Sudan. Here at home, the USS George HW Bush returned stateside after more than half a year at sea. CBN's Mark Martin was there to capture the service members' happy homecoming with their loved ones.
As the massive aircraft carrier made its way to port, its sailors lined the perimeter of the ship as excited family and friends anxiously waited. More than 8 months is a long time away, and the reunions reflect that.
This is our 8th deployment, so she's been through 8 deployments, 17 years of marriage. So I would say that it was routine, but it's never routine. It's always a joy to come back and see my family again, especially after 8.5 months.
This is amazing. I mean, I haven't seen this guy in ever. I mean, he was born on deployment, so in the middle of deployment, I got to video chat with my wife, and this is the first time I get to see him.
Rear Admiral Dennis Velez commands the entire Carrier Strike Group 10.
I've been doing this for 31 years. This is my 10th deployment, and I just come in here and seeing families, seeing the sailors, seeing their families for the first time. It is magical. It is really it is the best part of the deployment, is coming home.
About 5,000 sailors served on board the USS George HW Bush during this deployment. They worked with 26 countries, developing relationships with NATO allies and partners in both the Africa and Europe areas of operation.
All a part of our effort to reinforce the strong relationship that we have with our NATO allies and to promote peace through strength and strength through unity.
The strike group also participated in the largest bilateral U.S.-Israeli exercise in history.
Units from the Army, the Air Force, and the United States Navy joined up with Israeli Defense Forces and participated in a multi-domain, so air, maritime, and land warfare exercises.
Faith also played an important role in this deployment. Lieutenant Commander Brandon Hood serves as chaplain.
Usually when our sailors show up to underway chapel services in the forecastle, we say, "Welcome to the Great Awakening" aboard George Herbert Walker Bush. It's usually filled to overflowing, and we're very grateful for a rock band and gospel choir that combine forces every Sunday and just rock out, and it's a very alive chapel service.
I absolutely rededicated my life to Christ, and I feel so good about it.
I'm excited. I don't even know. It's like there's no words to explain what it's like to be secretly praying declarations over your husband, and for him to email you and say, "I've accepted Jesus Christ into my heart." It blew me away. I literally just fell to my knees and was so excited, just thanking God for it.
CBN's Helping the Home Front, which partners with local churches to meet the needs of military families, took part in the celebration along with the Warrior's Journey organization. Among the items handed out by the groups, gift bags, Bibles, and other resources.
It's such an honor to be for CBN to have Helping the Home Front, that program, and to be able to reach out to all branches of the military and help families. We want to support them. They're out there fighting for our freedom, and we want them to know that we are here, right here in town, ready to serve them.
And after a lengthy deployment, it's time now to catch up and soak up the love of family and friends. Mark Martin, CBN News, Naval Station, Norfolk, Virginia.
Wow, great story. Thank you, Mark. And up next, Ukrainian children kidnapped, shipped to Russia, and brainwashed. How kids have become pawns in Vladimir Putin's war, and the international advocates working to bring them home. Welcome back. Tens of thousands of children have been forcibly stripped from their families in Ukraine, shipped to remote parts of Russia, and then illegally adopted.
The international community has labeled it a war crime, while NGOs are scrambling to rescue and return these children to their homes. CBN contributor Chuck Holton has the story.
Ukrainian children are being used as pawns in Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine. Vladimir Putin is accused by the International Criminal Court of unlawful deportation of children. Ukrainian authorities are pushing for the return of thousands of Ukrainian kids taken from their own country and forcibly adopted into Russian families.
The numbers of the children vary anywhere from 16,000 that have been proven to, by name, it's 16,000, like 121 children, so it's by names, to over 300,000 that the Russian Commissioner for Children's Rights is claiming that they've taken over. And these children have been illegally taken to Russia. These are Ukrainian children, and given Russian citizenship and being adopted into Russian families really illegally.
Last May, President Putin changed Russian adoption laws to simplify the process and enable these illegal adoptions.
Majority of them do have living parents or relatives, and so they have been illegally, many of them have been forcefully separated from their parents when the parents were taken into so-called filtration camps, where the parents have been checked for their allegiance to Ukraine and would be charged, with that as a crime, and the children would be separated and taken into Russia or some into the occupied Crimea.
When the mother with her 4-year-old daughter tried to pass this filtration camp, and then they separate her from her daughter, and she had to give her little daughter to some woman she even didn't know, and we still don't know what happened to her.
The children are often sent to remote parts of Russia where they're brainwashed and turned against their own families.
They were transferred to some regions in Russia without any connection, without even cell phones. They have no money. They have no even opportunity to connect with Ukrainian authorities or relatives in Ukraine.
The ICC has issued an arrest warrant charging Putin and his Children's Rights Commissioner with war crimes for these disturbing practices. The Russians say they took the children for their protection and are working with foreign organizations to repatriate them.
Last summer, they've encouraged parents to send them to the summer camps so that the children would have some alleviation from war, and then they never returned the children.
Ukrainian authorities are working tirelessly to have these children returned. On April 9th, a group of 31 Ukrainian children were reunited with their families here in Kyiv, a happy ending to an ongoing nightmare for at least a few Ukrainian mothers. But there are many more still missing.
It is maybe unreal to realize that those things are going on just now, are happening in the center of Europe, but they do. These things are happening, and just imagine what those women feel.
Chuck Holton, CBN News, Ukraine.
Thanks, Chuck. Coming up, what started as a ragtag band of fighters today is one of the most powerful militaries in the world. How the Israeli Defense Forces has protected the Jewish state for 75 years. Welcome back. Israel this week marks 75 years as a nation. Since 1948, it has faced the constant threat of extinction from regional neighbors.
Yeah, and that's why the Jewish state developed one of the strongest militaries in the world. Chris Mitchell brings us the details from Jerusalem.
When David Ben-Gurion announced the state of Israel on May 14, 1948, 6 surrounding Arab nations attacked the newborn country within hours.
Then it was small units of very patriotic people, some of them Holocaust survivors who just came off the boat from Europe and put on IDF uniforms and joined battle and defended Israel in 1948 against 6 Arab armies.
CBN News interviewed Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus about the Israel Defense Forces, the IDF, from its beginning in 1948 to today. He has a key perspective, serving in the IDF for more than 24 years. With the last 4 as its chief international spokesman. From that initial war that threatened its early existence, the tiny young nation faced war in 1967 and 1973 when Israel's enemies sought to annihilate the country. Outnumbered and outgunned, Conrica says Israel still had the upper hand.
I would say that our biggest advantage and what has allowed Israel to be victorious on the battlefield and off the battlefield, to defeat advancing Arab armies at a ratio of 1-to-10. What has been really at the heart of those achievements have been the excellent men and women serving in the IDF. It was never about the stuff, never about the planes, the tanks, the weapons. It was about the human spirit, their commitment to the mission, and their absolute understanding that when they look back, they see home.
Conricus credits that to Israeli soldiers, realizing they're both the front and last line of defense.
They know that their parents, their families, their communities rely on them, and therefore they did amazing achievements on the battlefield, knowing that if they fail, the country is in danger.
As Israel still faces threats to its existence, Conricus hopes today's IDF can capture the spirit of those early pioneers.
To go back to our roots of 1948 and even before that, look at the spirit, the daring spirit of the IDF is, I think, what is needed on all fronts. Against all of our enemies, the message should be that Israel is strong, focused, has the capabilities, and most importantly, the will to safeguard itself and defend itself.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, finally tonight, a Michigan third grader proved to his classmates the power of change.
That's right. 9-year-old Killian Palmer changed the school board for better mac and cheese as part of his persuasive writing assignment. Killian told a local reporter he noticed an improvement afterwards.
How does that make you feel?
Pretty great. I mean, thank you for changing it, and also, what did you even put in there before? It tasted strange.
Oh, I think of the meme of what is in this?
Yeah, he was talking about the perfect cheese to noodle ratio. That guy's got my vote.
Go Killian, starting early for to stand for change.
Thanks for watching.
Have a great